going to start with a warning for our viewers. This next segment, we will be talking about trauma. We will be talking about sexual violence. In November of 2005, Shannon Moroney's life was changed forever. A month after marrying her now ex-husband, Jason, he brutally sexually assaulted two women, kidnapped them, and then held them in the basement of Shannon's home. She was not there at the time. Shannon wrote a memoir called Through the Glass in 2011. Her story went global. An anniversary edition of the book is being released 20 years after the crimes, with new reflections on her personal journey and how it's informed the work she does now as a trauma therapist. Shannon is joining us this morning in studio. Good to have you here.
Thank you so much, Lindsay.
It has been 20 years since Jason committed those horrific crimes. You released the book 14 years ago. When was the last time you read it?
I read it just before it went to the printers.
What was that like for you?
Well, I mean, at that point, I was still in editing mode. But coming up, I'm going to be recording the audiobook. And so that is actually going to be the first time that I really read the whole thing through again. So
how are you feeling about that?
I'm looking forward to the experience. I'm nervous because I don't read aloud that much, but I'm looking forward to it. What I do very often, though, is recount the story and tell the story as a speaker or with my own clients. And so that brings about a lot of reflection.
Speaking of reflecting, I mean, people often ask you, and I'm going to ask this too as well, do you still keep in contact with Jason?
This is my number one asked question all the time. Yeah. So we are still in touch. It's right now, after 20 years, I usually receive a hand-painted birthday card from him that always says how proud he is of me and how sorry he is. And then every year I write back a Christmas card that says, I forgive you.
Why do you stay in touch with him?
We have peace between us. And he's one of the most important person to ever come into my life. And I think because of our restorative dialogue, because of this forgiveness process, which has been an ongoing journey, one of the things I learned was that offering forgiveness once would not be the only time that I would revisit that experience. I'm really careful to say, and I want everyone to know, I don't forgive what he did, that these crimes are not forgivable, but the human being behind the horror of that is the person that I do forgive.
Can I ask you a little bit more about forgiveness?
Of course.
Because was there not a point years after the crimes that you wrote a letter to Jason saying, I unforgive you?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Tell me about that moment.
And it's recounted really fully in the new epilogue. But this moment was my infant twins. Well, I think they were maybe 6 or 8 or 10 weeks old. It's all a blur.
Yeah.
But I was so distraught as a new mom. I had a very traumatic birth, and then twins themselves they're the beautiful trauma of my life, having these two infants. And I felt so down, also with postpartum depression, and I felt depleted, that I just didn't have enough for them. And I decided to play the blame game, which we often do, and I just decided that Jason was at fault for everything. And that if I had been able to be a mom as I planned with him when I was 30 and hadn't gone through all this trauma, hadn't used everything that I had to get through it, that I would be in way better shape to be a mother. And so in this moment of anger and just rage and blame and sadness, I just wrote him a letter and I said, I unforgive you. It was all too soon. And I just feel awful. And then not only did I write the letter, because as a therapist, I often encourage my clients to write a letter, but we don't always send it, and we never send the first draft. This was the first draft that I sent. I just put it in the mail and felt momentary relief, just because sometimes we like that release of our anger. But I was still feeling terrible and still feeling like not enough. And so it was about 2 weeks later when I got the response back. And in this letter, it was a phone call rather, and Jason said, once again, I'm so sorry. He'd received a letter just prior to a 5-day lockdown where he'd sat with it. And he called me and said, I'm just so sorry, and what can I do? And the thing is, from prison, he can't do anything. it just can't do anything. He could never have cleaned up the crime scene. I had to do that. He couldn't figure out what to do with his things. He couldn't answer all of the questions that were being asked of me societally. I was the one to bear the stigma. He was placed in solitary confinement, which protected society from him, but also protected him from having to face up to the consequences of what he did, leaving me in that stead. And so, you know, he couldn't do anything in this moment, sort of years later, but at least hearing his voice, hearing that apology was very helpful for me, hearing that accountability, which is not something that every victim of crime or family member receives, but I did. And in that moment, I decided, okay, I'll re-forgive you, as if with my magic wand of forgiveness. Yeah. But it was for me, Lindsay. It just was for me, and it just released this, and I could then have that energy I needed for my babies.
For your babies.
They deserve it.
The most important thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Shannon, thank you for coming in this morning. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and happy Restorative Justice Week.
Yes, absolutely. The anniversary edition of Through the Glass is out in bookstores tomorrow. We'll be right back.